Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever or wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Edwards, and this is the Channel Zone podcast. And today, I'm delighted to welcome Tom Corrigan. Tom is a Chief Revenue Officer at QBS Software. Tom has a long and fascinating career in the IT industry and the channel, going right back into the early 1990s with IBM, then through to other roles and senior roles in organizations such as Avnet, Tech Data, Mimecast, and now QBS. So that means, if you think about it, the Tom has seen the industry evolve through several major eras, from mainframe and mid-range computing through to networking, the rise of the internet. You'll remember the old dial-up, as I do, as well, through to virtualization, through software and services, into SaaS, cybersecurity, cloud, marketplaces, and the increasingly complex partner ecosystems that we see today. So what makes today's conversation especially interesting really is that Tom is now at QBS at a really important stage in its growth journey. So as the business continues to develop, its role in helping vendors, resellers and partners bring software to market more effectively. So today I'd like to talk to Tom about his career, what he's learned about the channel over the years, what's changed, what's stayed the same, and whether in a healthy channel ecosystem, a rising tide really can lift all boats. So Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate the invite onto the podcast today. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a couple of weeks since we met at InfoSec. So thank you. As I say, very much looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, look, let's crack on. Tom, we're going to be talking about issues that are relative to QBS and to your role there. So for those that don't know, can you give the audience a bit of a view on QBS? It's growing incredibly quickly. So it'd be useful to know, where does the business come from? What's the backstory?
So QBS Technology Group is operating now, Mark, across 25 locations physically in Europe, Middle East and Africa. So we are a software delivery platform, where we have a lot of focus on, a managed vendor portfolio within that software delivery platform, and then really immense skills and capabilities in sourcing, many thousands of tier 3 and tier 4 vendors on behalf of our partners and their enterprise customers as well. We are Dave Stevenson is our CEO, a really great guy. We're maniacally focused on organic growth, which I think about every morning when I wake up, and we want to drive 20% plus. That's what we're after. And also we're ambitious for surgically precision and targeted acquisition. We've done quite a few of those over the years to bring us into new territories, bring new vendor portfolios to life, bring great people into the company. So really, in terms of where we've come from and where we're going to, we will do it through a blend of a real maniacal focus on organic growth, which is hugely important, but also where we see great opportunity for precision engineered and acquisition. We will continue to pursue this as well.
Right, and so that's clearly then the route, because you've publicly said that QBS has the ambition to move from hundreds of millions in software revenue to, I think there's a target of $1 billion and beyond. So given the trajectory of the business, that's a pretty, as I said, the growth expectations are high, but they're based on experience from what I can tell. I think I'm confident that growth will happen. What can a CRO, what does a Chief Revenue Officer in distribution need to do to turn that from just a fancy line, a slogan, you might say, we want to go from 700 million to a billion? What does a CRO do to make that happen? Can I ask? Or are these trade secrets?
Mark, I don't think there are any secrets, and I don't think there are any magic wands either.
Silver bullets?
What I would say, here's a silver bullet for you in 3 words. Execution beats theory. There's a silver bullet. What do I mean by that? The market is there already. Enterprise customers need to fuel their business on the software that they use. their productivity and efficiency and growth is hugely dependent on their software estates. They need to buy those software estates, and our company is set up to sell those software estates through channels. So through MSPs, through resellers, through systems integrators, and increasingly, different types of alliances partners that are coming to life. Particularly in the back of the hyperscalers. We were recently awarded, the AWS DSOR, one of only 12 globally. So what is the magic sauce? Magic sauce is execution.
Right.
Okay. Doing things simpler, better, and faster than everybody else. There's a nugget.
Yes.
Simpler, better, faster.
That's another 3 words. Not 3-letter acronyms. 3-word statements here.
And another 3 words. And what I would say is, Mark, I built a career on this, and I will continue to execute a career on this. This business is still incredibly relationship led. You can have the best product and the best, platform and the best service and best price, but it needs to be underpinned by fantastic relationships across your supply chain and internal within your company. So what I would say is have the best relationships both internally and externally, and execute with precision in the right markets, with the right tools, with the right messages, the right technologies, and the growth will come. And that's what we've been experiencing on the organic growth side.
Right. I checked the other day. I've seen growth expectations even for this year between 8 and 12% across the industry. Just the total, the spend, which is what I mean by the rising tide. I suppose all boats benefit as a consequence of that. I'm intrigued by what you say there about relationships, because we met for the first time a couple of weeks ago at InfoSec, a face-to-face exhibition, probably I think the preeminent kind of security exhibition, certainly maybe in Europe, but certainly in the UK. Let's go back. It's only 6 years ago. I dread to think about COVID and lockdown. We transitioned heavily at that point to virtual, not only virtual meetings but virtual events as well seemed to be taking off at one point. But you made the investment in InfoSec, and again, relationships being a key to that. How important then are, in terms of developing and maintaining those relationships, how important are events to your business? This episode of the Channel Zone podcast is brought to you by InConnection, the trusted events agency to some of the biggest names in IT. InConnection knows that in today's fast-paced world, it's not just about delivering a return on your events investment. It's about delivering unforgettable experiences. Because some events fade within hours, while others become memories that are talked about for years. InConnection, the go-to event agency for the IT channel, creating memories that matter.
I would say they're very important to our business. Just putting aside brand awareness, and your reputation of your company, right? That's enhanced at these events. Our reason for being is to take great technologies through our software delivery platform to the market. There's the market there in front of you in that hall for 3 days.
Right.
The UK reseller market, the UK end customer market. I think over the course of the 3 days, the QBS team working with our vendor, the vendors we were working with over the 3 days, I think we got well over 1,000 scans. That we're all, following up with through our partners. So it's great for conversations, great for lead generation, great for reputation enhancement, and it does improve the relationships you've got. My WhatsApp was buzzing over the 3 days, early morning and maybe a bit later in the evening, going, "Oh, Tommy, you're around, cup of tea, quick beer, are you popping in there? Are you popping in there?" Because we're human beings, we're a social species, and we thrive. Many of us thrive on giving and taking information and using it to our advantages, and and helping others out where they're looking for information, where they're looking for information that you've got, and you can help them out, and help them inform their decision making. So, how important are these events? hugely important. Somebody said to me recently, "Oh, Tom, I don't think InfoSec is, what it was." And I thought this year, InfoSec was the best I've ever seen it.
I would agree 100%. It back with a bang. There was a period, I think, again, I can't stand thinking back those 6 years to the lockdown period, but immediately after that, it was very iffy. I can't remember what year they kind of commenced after lockdown, but my experience then was the attendance was way down. The hall didn't have a buzz to it, and yet, as I said, this year, perhaps more than any other year, even before COVID, I would have said there was definitely a buzz in that hall. I was only there for the day, but it was so well worth you being there. Certainly well worth me being there as well. Positives for the future, that's for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Brilliant. So moving on, Tom. Like myself, we've been around in IT and computing for a very, very, very long time. Myself a little longer than yourself. As you said, you mentioned Granada Computer Services. Granada Computer Services in the 1990s. Most people here won't even remember TPM or third-party maintenance. I was involved in the early 90s myself also. Question to you here. So it's a 30-plus year period, really. Yeah. What stands out to you the most in terms of the changes in technology and maybe in the way that the tech business is organized and conducted? So you've got such a perspective over that entire period. What stands out the most?
So I would say, Mark, I've got a good 360-degree view of the supply chain built up over that period. I've worked at vendors twice, worked at,
hardware and software.
Distribution twice. I'm familiar with hardware technologies, familiar with software technologies. So I would say the biggest change over that period is, the adoption of subscription-based software service. So, back in the day, many customers, they bought their software, they installed it locally, they ran their local server estates, and they were in charge of their own destiny, a cluster of servers in the corner running their systems. With the massive adoption now of SaaS, and the delivery of SaaS through, the vendors, that is the big change, because it's no longer acceptable to sell a piece of software and then just come back for a renewal next year or support and maintenance.
Yes.
But that's no longer acceptable.
Has that gone completely? Or
No, it hasn't.
No, it's still there in some pockets.
No, there are vendors still operating in that way that, they're selling a license, the customer uses it, and then, after the project, it's retired. But many of those vendors are, of course, trying to move into a subscription-based delivery model because the revenue is much more predictable, and it makes ultimately their companies more valuable. Having a
bed of recurring revenues.
You got it. Yeah. So the big change is how software is consumed. So now we're coming from this period right now in seat-based subscription. So the number of seats you have, you consume your software in that way. Software is delivered from the cloud, and the resellers and the technology supply chain now have a different job to do, because it's not just about selling the software. It's about making sure the software is adopted, making sure it's configured, making sure it's tuned, making sure it performs, making sure that software is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing at the customer, so that when it comes to the renewal, that's that very important date for everybody, that the customer renews. Because in SaaS, Mark, there's a very high cost of customer acquisition. That first cost of customer acquisition is really high, and the deployment of the technology into that customer it makes it high. However, when you get into first year renewal, second year renewal, third year renewal, and you're upselling into that customer, this customer becomes incredibly more profitable for the vendors and for the channel. Therefore, that renewal is of utmost importance.
Yeah.
So the channel then have this role. How do they support the customer through the life cycle of that subscription?
Yes. So the customer success representative is probably a consequence of that. They have to make sure that the customer is happy. They can't just walk away having made that initial sale. They've got to make sure the customer's using it, getting value for money, and that's the only way to ensure that they're going to get that renewal. But I remember reading, I'm sure, because again, software as a service to me should mean that basically a monthly subscription that you can cancel at any time. But that's not typically the case now, though, is it? I mean, it's still it's a monthly recurring revenue. It's a monthly payment, but the reality is it's a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year or more contract. But the entire industry seems to operate on that. The more I look into data centers and AI data centers, it's still the same thing. It's recurring revenues, even for infrastructure now. It's basically gigawatt data center as a service. Infrastructure platform. The whole thing is monthly recurring revenues. Stabilizes. It's great for business, that for sure. I work with some companies, and they're 80-90% of their business is recurring revenues. That's a lovely solid base. They can breathe.
That's the beauty of our business model, Mark. We're a software delivery platform. We're selling software that's mostly in subscription mode. Therefore, our own revenue streams become predictable, and the business intelligence and the analytics we can apply to our own business can inform, okay, how do we support the partners in helping the partners renew and helping the partners expand and helping the partners cross-sell technologies into those customers. And I would just go back to something you said about MRR, monthly recurring.
Yes.
Vendors prefer annually recurring. Annually billed, annually contracted is amazing. That's a really predictable revenue model. With the monthly recurring, typically it's still annually contracted. So it may be annually contracted monthly bills, which is where, particularly in the world of MSP, and again, that's a big part of our business, because the MSPs typically sell their service description and their service level on a per month basis to the customers.
Correct.
So there's a lot of ARR out there. There's MRR out there, but the vast majority of it is in an annually contracted model. And of course, this is how the DCs now are. Your GPU service, your whether that's any of the hyperscalers, whether it's GCP, whether it's Amazon that we're doing a lot with right now, and whether it's Microsoft, it's all as a service, because these giant data centers and these giant software infrastructures, they need to be consumed, and they are being consumed by the customers who are dependent on these softwares and these services for their existence.
So the annual recurring revenue. So that's annual in advance then, isn't it? So again, that takes me back to the third-party maintenance, go back into the 1990s. Early on, we were selling services into BT. BT, remember, I think were privatized at about that time. And Granada Computer Services were a big supplier of third-party maintenance to BT. BT at that point would pay for third-party maintenance annually in advance. So what a business that was for the maintainers. Fantastic. But then the procurement team at BT got involved, and over a period of time we went from annual in advance to quarterly in advance payments, quarterly in advance to monthly in advance, to monthly in arrears, to quarterly in arrears. So it was a shit business by the end of it, to be honest with you. But that transition probably took a number of years. I don't think it'll go that. Is there? So if the customer sometimes, does a distributor act as like a finance house in some respects between the vendor and the end user? Does a customer sometimes sign up annually but pay you monthly, and then you've paid annually? Does that kind of, or does that not take place?
Mark, every possible iteration of financial construct. So different customers for different projects have different requirements, and the channel Absolutely QBS Technology Group across the region, working with finance partners as well, and the power of our own balance sheets. We will help the channel construct a payment plan on a deal that matters,
Right.
and delivers to the end customer requirements.
Right.
So, we see all sorts. You see great deals for a 3-year commit with upfront payment, right? You still see these deals.
Right.
You see deals that are, I'm going to commit for 3 years, but I want to pay quarterly because that's how my project is going to deliver.
Right. I
How
got you.
my
I got
project
you.
is going to deliver ROI into my business. So every iteration you'll possibly see, and monthly upfront, annually upfront, in arrears, carved up in quarters, half years, multi-year.
Right.
And I suppose that's where the channel really brings a lot of value to life, because we can work with the channel partners who are working directly with these end customers to understand what do we need to do to give that customer the flexibility to do the business with us.
Right.
And in many cases, the vendors haven't got that flexibility because, the vendors are designed to sell infrastructure and software as a service, but not finance that infrastructure and software as a service at scale across the globe.
Right. Right. So very complex and delicate, but also from what you're saying there, wonderfully bespoke. Great that you think, as you said, there must be all sorts of permutations that are required and requested at times. It's good to know that the industry can actually address that. So you mentioned software delivery platform a number of times so far. So what distinction do you think you actually bring for a vendor, a reseller, and ultimately the customer by having this software delivery platform rather than just being a distributor? What value does the software delivery platform provide?
So, Mark, what I would say is, a software delivery platform is a fusion of technology, process, and people. That's what it is.
You like your 3-word slogans here, Tom. You really like that. We've got, what was that one? People, process, and technology.
Yeah. Your execution beats theory. People, technology. The three. Actually, three is all right.
It works for me. I like it.
So, when you're operating at the scale that we are, with more than 12,500 vendors in that platform across the Europe, Middle East, and Africa, that can't be managed by human beings on their own. It's just not possible. So you've got to have that fusion of people, process, and technology that brings order to that huge volume of vendors as you bring that vendor portfolio to life for our channel. You want your channel partners to be able to log onto your systems and look up and check on a particular vendor, check on a particular price, check on a particular renewal. This is part of the platform.
Right.
And, to continue to scale, that's something we're going to continue to enhance. How do we make the software delivery platform bigger, better, faster, so that the channel partners can help their end customers consume the software they need to consume in the easiest possible supply chain delivery model. And really, that's what we're pursuing. I would say, are we there? I think we're a long way down that road.
Right.
But if we thought we were perfect, well, that would be a very dangerous place to be, because if you think you're perfect and unbeatable, then complacency appears. So no, we're absolutely not perfect, and we've a lot of improvements to deliver. But we feel that operating in the way that we are through the software delivery platform, we feel that this is how the future of software procurement and also software delivery and ongoing software maintenance and support. We think that this is how it will be done, and we believe we're ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Like many others, you've spoken about AI, security, and cloud as major growth ingredients. So is that prediction just UK, or is it now across EMEA as a whole? And I just wonder, have you got any particular examples of growth, either in specific countries where it's kind of, I don't know, extraordinary growth, or maybe with particular vendors? Have you got any Or is it literally just, as I said, a rising tide for all businesses, all vendors, all regions?
Okay, so Mark, a great question. Now, I absolutely could not do on your show is to call a single vendor out, because if I did, my WhatsApp would be hopping
Right.
very quickly indeed as to how I could name drop one vendor over the fantastic portfolio of vendors that we carry.
Yes,
Um,
understood. We'll
uh,
retract that. What about
no,
countries then?
no,
Any
no,
specific?
but yeah, so what I could say, Mark, is um, uh, there's some interesting things going on. You know, sovereignty is really becoming a real, not a buzzword.
Right.
Sovereignty is now becoming a really important thing, in particularly in Europe. Of course,
Yes.
we're operating right across the continent. You know, we recently opened new offices in France, and we've just expanded our offices in Munich, and you know, we're across Eastern Europe, and you know, expanding down into Southern Europe. Sovereignty within the EU is becoming an increasingly important thing. So that's going to be driving a lot of initiatives now and into the future. So that's something for our European partners to watch out for sure. And how cloud is delivered in with sovereignty.
Right. Yes. With data sovereignty, you mean there? Yeah.
Oh, of course,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Security, which is a subject very close to my heart, having spent 8 years at Mimecast, which is the only vendor I will name drop on this podcast, by the way.
Okay. Right.
Fantastic company. Security,
Still
the
growing.
the attack surface just gets wider and wider and wider. The threat actors, the bad actors, whoever you want to call them,
Yeah.
they get more and more and more sophisticated. And there is a huge job now on the customers and the channel partners that support those customers and the vendors that deliver the technologies, supporting those customers to keep those customers safe and sound. Because years ago it used to be, yeah, we just need to stop malware. We block it at an endpoint because that's what some of these vendors are great at doing. Oh, it comes through email. We capture it via email. We stick it in a sandbox. We explode it, and then we decide, oh, this is how it worked, and et cetera, et cetera. But now it's about impersonation. Nobody's trying to break in. Nobody's trying to break in with brute force. What they're actually breaking in with is the credentials you provided them with.
Right.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Come on.
Identity.
Right, identity. Right. The bad guys and girls are breaching organizations because people within those organizations, or data within those organizations, or something within those organizations, freely delivered the credentials that the hackers required to effect the breach. So. Security massive, and of course we've made huge investments in our security business.
Yes.
I would expect that on this journey to 1 billion and beyond, which is not
Right.
going to take that. It's not going to take us that long, by the way, Mark. We're a long way down that road already.
Already.
You know, at 1 billion and beyond, we would expect that more than 15%, you know, maybe approaching 20% of our business will be in the security segment.
Right.
Because where we're at today, that's the contribution that we see of security, and we see a lot of growth there. So security, a huge growth area, and AI. You know, there's so much talk about it. You know, everybody wants to do it, and everybody's trying to work out how do you monetize it, and you know what services do you have to bring to life to be relevant in that space. Huge amount of new vendors in that space as well. So it is absolutely driving customer spend. And I'll give you an example, Mark, of at InfoSec, two security executives from a very well-known global company, end customer, are huge in their industry, came to our stand, tried to slip away with a couple of free bottles of water. And of course, I was never going to let that happen.
Right.
Had with a really pleasant early exchange where they felt disarmed. And I said to them, guys, what are you doing in here? In the hall? What are you doing here today? And they said, we've got several thousand software developers, and each of them are using around 50 agents. And he said, we don't want to stop them. These agents are giving us competitive advantage, software delivery, and he said we want to know what these agents are doing and how through the agentic language they're talking to each other, and so we want to map them and understand what they're doing in the same way as you would a human being. Right. So AI, is that driving things? Of course it is. And I've just given you an example of a use case that customers are now deploying agentic AI at extraordinary pace. But that's going to drive a security.
I was going to say it is the unintended. It's not an unintended consequence. We all know it's going to happen. The greater the growth of AI, the greater the growth of the attack surface that you mentioned. So
yes, of course it is. Yeah. So it's so you said you referenced cloud security AI, and in my answer that felt actually quite long now that I think back over what I said. Cloud, think sovereignty. Cloud consumption,
yes.
Absolutely. The hyperscalers are continuing to draw massive cloud commits from the enterprise and mid-market end customers, and of course we're playing a great role there because we believe AWS for starters. We believe we've got a great role to play for the channel, and then security will continue to grow. And as AI adoption across the enterprises continues to grow and grow, it's going to fuel the other two in a natural course anyway. So I think across those three areas, there's massive opportunity for the supply chain to add value and continue to find ways to deliver value to the channel and the customers so that we continue to grow with that tide or rise with that tide.
Yes, no, that's fantastic. So the future looks bright. It's a good space to be in. That's for sure. So, last couple of questions. QBS now giving partners access to a very broad software publisher base. Am I right? Is it like 12,500 publishers? I think I've seen stated with you online. How do you stop that extraordinary breadth becoming perhaps overwhelming in terms of complexity for resellers? It's like a huge menu. Have you ever been? You probably. Do you like your food? You probably like more.
I probably look as if I like my food.
No, I just thought when I said that, I thought that's not a good question, really, is it? Have you ever been to? I think there's a restaurant in London. Have you been to? Is it Le René de Venise? L'Entrecôte Le René de Venise, I think it's called. There's two in London. There's one in the West End, one in the city. I think there's one in New York. It's a restaurant, French style restaurant, but they only do one meal. They only do a steak et frites.
Yes,
a starter. Do you know it? So the starter is just as a lovely salad with a dressing, and the main course is steak et frites. Simple. And I was vegetarian, oddly enough, for 8 years back in the 1990s. And one of the great things about being veggie back then was, basically there was only two things ever on the menu. It was just basically, a cheese and tomato pizza or a vegetarian lasagna. When I came back to eating meat, the breadth of some of the menus I just found disconcerting. You know what I mean? There's just too much there. So similarly, with such a broad range of vendors and kind of software publishers, how do you help the resellers see past the sheer volume of it and derive value? How does that work?
I would say, Mark, at first glance, it could look daunting.
Right.
However, here's where it gets less daunting. We work with the top enterprise resellers across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Those enterprise resellers deal with the whole of the software estates at the enterprise end customers, and we can help those enterprise resellers understand the customer estates, understand where their procurement routes would be better served. Either do these end customers better off staying direct with a particular vendor, or are they better off staying through direct with a reseller to a vendor for other set of vendors? And where in that, like in an enterprise customer, there could be many thousands of individual publishers at that single enterprise end customer.
Yeah,
that is a massive procurement headache for that enterprise end customer.
Yeah.
Where where their procurement teams and their governance teams and their compliance teams are spending 80% of their time on only 20% of their software spend, because these smaller software vendors that we represent across Europe, Middle East and Africa, many of them, they fall into that 20% of the software spend category at that end customer, but they're consuming 80% of that end customer's resources in managing them, because in many cases, there's many hundreds or thousands of them. It's easy for that enterprise end customer to manage his tier one vendors. Again, I said at the beginning of the podcast, I wasn't going to call vendors out, but we know who they are. At an enterprise end customer, they will have the top vendors where there's 80% of the spend, but only 20% of the vendors. At the other end, there's 80% of the vendors, but 20% of the spend, requiring 80% of the effort. We've got all the tools and support available to help the enterprise end customers address that use case in the end user. So that's very, very important. And furthermore, in terms of a reseller could look at us and go, "Wow, where do you start?" When you peel back the layer, we have got a portfolio of managed vendors across Europe, Middle East, and Africa that we have a huge amount of expertise on, with business development, with technical resources and sales resources, and all sorts of licensing expertise to optimize that reseller's engagement with that customer. So that's maybe 100 vendors across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. The rest falls into that sourced category where we do the buying, because we have all the expertise and all the knowledge and all the systems and all the contracts in place with those vendors already. We do all the buying so that the resellers and the enterprise end customers, the buying and the contracting, so that the resellers and those enterprise customers don't need to worry about it. So the use case is, enterprise end customer, or the reseller, do I really want to write contracts with another 900 publishers that I'm going to do 1 or 2 deals a year with into my customers, or do I give it to an expert like QBS and increasingly the resellers vote with their purchase orders, and thank you to all the resellers for doing that. They vote with their purchase orders and they give us that problem to solve, and we solve it very well.
Super. Sounds like you have an answer to it, and it doesn't come down to just offering, as you said, the multitude, the breadth of offering in many respects is the advantage, as long as it's managed correctly and effectively, which clearly is where you guys kind of position QBS, which is great.
And Mark, I go back to just
another one.
Execution beats theory. I'll repeat the one I said earlier on. In that 12,500 vendor portfolio, that to the untrained eye could look like a really, really daunting prospect, where we've got the expertise and the ability to execute with precision. We do. So
yes. It's no different to a department store at the end of the day, is it? As I said, you just need maybe a concierge, somebody there to kind of guide you through it, or to know what it is that you're looking for. So it makes an awful lot of sense.
Yeah.
Tom, I got one last question for you on behalf. When we met at InfoSec a few weeks ago, you'll remember I was with Nick Hamilton from In Connection. In Connection, the sponsor of the podcast, and this is the Memories That Matter section. On behalf of our sponsor, we've been asking each guest on the podcast to pick out their favourite or the most memorable. I mean, sometimes it might be the most memorable, perhaps for the wrong reasons, but let's say the favourite or most memorable corporate hospitality type event, be it a President's Club, special event for customers or partners. With over the years, what would you pick out of that? What's the most memorable event for you?
Well, first of all, before I give you that, Mark, I'd say, there are people in this industry. I talked earlier on about the power of the relationships and the power of the people. Power of the people. Nick Hamilton is one of those people. Absolutely solid human being, amazing human being, and does a lot of great work outside of the commercial side of his
charity work as well. I mean, the comedy lunch raises huge amounts of money, and I'm going to one next week with him. There's a sporting luncheon on up in Manchester, which is he puts together every year. Great speakers, but also a great fundraiser for important charities. So I agree with you. He's a real connector, isn't he?
a real connector, and there's a few people like him, like and a real gentleman and a wonderful human being. So I've been to loads of great places. I've been blessed in this industry. Like, let's face it, who else goes to rugby and Grand Prix and sunny places and snowy places and right? Where else do you get the opportunity to do that as part of your job?
Yes.
Right. So, there's been plenty of that over the years, and it's been truly amazing and great to strengthen the relationships and have some fun. But I'd bring this back around to something a little bit more important, I think, than just the hospitality. I think this industry, because of the money that's made and the characters that exist and the networks that exist, I think we could do better in pooling our skills and capabilities and resources around the fundraising, around giving back to communities. And outside of work, I'm a scout leader, have been for 6 years.
Oh, wow.
It's a commitment. It's something about giving to the community. So rather than say, "Oh, that club trip that I went on was the greatest thing that's ever happened," I would say this: this industry has a job to do, to come together to redirect some of the rewards we've been lucky enough to generate and put them into needy causes. And for that reason, the thing that I will reference on the most enjoyable thing that I've done is for a number of years I buddied up with Graham Watt at Softcat, where Softcat and Mimecast put a joint team together for a charity cycle event up in Scotland supporting Social Bite. One particular event, it was wet and I got a puncher before it even left Glasgow, and it was a bit miserable actually. But we raised loads of money. And that money went to an incredible cause. And for that reason, and I did want to answer your question, the most memorable events were one of those events in particular where I had a proper bike this time. And the first couple of events I did, my bike was an old bashed up old thing, and it was hard going, but the Bike to Work scheme sorted me out. And we raised a lot of money, and we built relationships and strengthened relationships and had a lot of fun. And we came back down from Scotland feeling with an increased sense of purpose than we had on the way up.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Oh, that's fantastic. And as I said, it's the opportunities that probably are there going begging are incredible. Only yesterday, I don't know if you know an MSP called Intercity, Birmingham based, Intercity. But I think I saw yesterday they had their annual golf day, but the golf day raised over £10,000 for the Army Benevolent Fund. So you have a golf day, and bear in mind, we mentioned Nick's business. It was golf days where he started. Really, we go back 25 years ago. The golf day was de rigueur. Not so much nowadays. But so you can have your golf day, you can do all of that with your partners and your customers, but at the same time you can raise money for an important charity. So a great point you make. Fantastic, and I'll send you regards, and I'll make sure that Nick takes the time out to listen to what you've had to say there. So much appreciated, Tom. Not only for that question, but for the time you spent here with us today. Thank you ever so much. We'll do it again at some point in the not too distant future, if that's okay with you.
It will be absolutely perfect with me, Mark. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and for the invite and for the conversation. Really enjoyed it, and greetings to the channel community and anybody who takes the time to listen.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tom. See you again soon.
Bye bye.